These are the craziest ancient civilization conspiracies ever told on the Joe Rogan podcast. From an advanced civilization engineering humans and massive hidden structures under the pyramids to the lost kingdom of Atlantis and the crash site of Noah's Ark, get ready for the craziest ancient alien civilization stories as told on JRE. We start with one of the most provocative theories about the origins of humanity, that we were created by the Anunnaki through genetic engineering. According to ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki, who are reported as deities by archaeologists, were dissatisfied with their own labor-intensive mining efforts and decided to create a new species to serve as workers. By combining part of their DNA with the physical form of early hominids, they created humans. Let's hear the clip.
No matter where you go in any culture, you're going to discover that these beings, in some way, shape, or form, engaged mankind, brought knowledge, teaching, building techniques, and just so much more wisdom and information, esoteric wisdom, alchemy. All these things came from these people.
So the craziest version of this story is that they genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then established different types of civilizations and taught us how to build things, taught us all these different things. And enough time has passed that we've kind of forgotten. Mm-hmm. Enough time has passed. That's the wackiest version of it, right?
Right. That's the bare bones minimum.
Yeah, the wackiest version is that they made us.
Joe Rogan then talks about the importance of gold among early humans. He suggests that gold was used by this advanced race to clear the atmosphere of their home planet. As an example, he mentions that this may be possible soon and that it's currently explored by our scientists as a way to fight against climate change.
How bizarre it is that human beings have this incredible fascination for gold.
Yeah.
This fascination with gold is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why back when it was basically useless? You couldn't make a knife out of it.
Right.
You couldn't, like it didn't make sense that this would be so valuable. Just because it's rare, you're barely alive.
Right.
We're going, right? We're going back to full-on hunter and gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges. Mm-hmm. And it stays.
Yeah.
It stays forever.
Yeah.
Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
Right.
Then you move to like somewhere around the 2000s when climate scientists start proposing this idea of suspending reflective particles in the atmosphere.
Right.
And then when you realize the unique properties of gold, how unusual it is in terms of like a building material, you can take a tiny piece of gold and cover an enormous area with it. It's a strange metal.
The next segment comes from episode 1897 with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, where they dive into the amazing engineering of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramid is described as one of the most stunning ancient structures, with stones so immense that their transportation remains a subject of debate among historians and archaeologists. Graham Hancock discusses how some granite blocks were sourced from quarries hundreds of miles away, raising questions about the technology available to ancient Egyptians.
Now, the Great Pyramid of Giza is probably the most stunning of all these ancient structures. And the stones are immense, and some of them were cut from a quarry that's hundreds of miles away. How do you think they did that?
Well, some of them, the granite in the Great Pyramid comes from more than 500 miles to the south. If you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof are, the ceiling of the King's Chamber are all made with gigantic granite blocks.
Stunning detail.
Stunning detail. Those blocks on the the roof of the King's Chamber weigh 70 tons each. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, they could move heavy blocks because they put them on wet sand and they push them along on wet sand. Well, maybe if you're just at ground level, that will do. But when you're 350 feet above the ground, as you are in the King's Chamber, that won't do at all. I don't know how they did it. All I know is they did it. I don't think anybody knows how they did it, how they lifted those stones, how they brought them up to that level. I think we're looking again at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that from the human memory banks almost completely, not entirely completely because there were survivors, but removed most of it.
While mainstream theories suggest that ramps and manual labor were used, alternative theories propose advanced lost technologies or even extraterrestrial assistance. The story continues into further ancient mysteries about the Great Flood and the speaker's quest to understand what really happened back then.
Sea level rise, it creates a powerful high energy zone. Anything that was existing on those flooded coastlines has just been pounded to hell.
It's going to be a lot more energetic than now. Imagine your sea level rising at 3 or 4 times at least faster than we've seen rise in the last century. And within there, juxtaposed are these episodes of very rapid sea level rise. So you're talking about a very energetic intertidal zone. And anything that's there, short of large megalithic blocks, is going to be utterly obliterated by the time the process is through.
In the next segment from episode 2293, Joe Rogan discusses a stunning new discovery that was made using cutting-edge technology. Researchers have uncovered massive underground structures that connect to the Great Pyramid of Giza. These structures extend over 600 meters deep into the bedrock and connect to even larger formations that stretch up to 2 kilometers below the Earth's surface.
So apparently, through the use of LiDAR, they have discovered that there are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers deep into the earth with coils. So enormous pillars, and then these coils. They don't understand what it is because they're just looking at LiDAR images. But whatever this is a uniform structure. There's several pillars. And all of this is like very, very, very weird.
Yeah, it's 600 meters descending down those cylinders, and then there's more stuff below it, and then there's additional structures inside of it. Yeah, that was crazy.
It's really crazy.
The technology creates high-resolution 3D images of the pyramid's interior works by analyzing micro-movements caused by background seismic activity. While mainstream archaeologists have dismissed these findings, alternative researchers see this as a pivotal moment in rewriting history. This story invites us to consider the possibility that the Great Pyramid was part of a much larger, more complex system than previously imagined.
What has just been announced in relation to the pyramids at the Giza Plateau and the plateau itself is so incredible and narrative shattering that I have been sitting here for the last hour trying to wrap my head around the implications of what we were just told. And this method leverages the analysis of micro movements typically generated by background seismic activity to achieve a high resolution full 3D tomographic imagery of the pyramid's interior and subsurface components. What's been discovered is that there are huge structures coming down from the base of the pyramid deep into the bedrock. In fact, over 600 meters deep, which then connects to structures that extend up to 2 kilometers below the surface of the ground. 2 kilometers. Massive internal structures connected to the base of the pyramid and extending deep, deep down.
What if ancient maps held clues to advanced civilizations lost to time? In the next discussion from episode 1284, Graham Hancock talks about the mysterious Pinkerton world map, which leaves Antarctica blank, implying that it wasn't discovered at the time. However, this contrasts with older maps which show Antarctica in surprising detail before it was even officially discovered. These maps suggest that ancient cartographers may have accessed knowledge or technology far beyond what we attribute to their era. Could this be evidence of a forgotten civilization capable of mapping the world with precision?
The so-called Pinkerton world map, drawn I think in 1813 or 1818, based on the latest exploration data at that time, shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody had found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Wolsey-Wooler world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. Right-hand side, there's Antarctica at the tip of South America. just south of South Africa. And it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. Antarctica was a much bigger. Now, what the fuck is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps.
In the next segment from episode 1742, Jimmy Corsetti discusses the advanced civilization of Atlantis and its origins, which is deeply tied to Plato. He explains that Plato's account of Atlantis was not an original invention, but rather a tale passed down through generations. According to the story, Solon, who was a Greek statesman and ancestor of Plato, traveled to Egypt and learned about Atlantis from the ancient Egyptians. He emphasizes that the roots of the tale lie in ancient Egyptian knowledge, raising the possibility that the story was based on real events or civilizations.
And Atlantis has always been the big one. That has been the one that everybody talked about, was this incredibly advanced civilization, and no one can figure out where it is.
I think that Atlantis represented a civilization that was doing great things. They were more global than what many people think would be possible. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land, and essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm, as passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt, and so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from.
According to Plato's account, the lost city of Atlantis was designed with concentric circles, 2 of water and 3 of land, a layout that symbolized harmony and balance. To make his case stronger, Jimmy Corsetti highlights the striking similarities between the mythical description of Atlantis and certain architectural features found in ancient Egypt.
You see that white? All those white blemishes? That's salt. This was under the ocean, and so let me say there's absolute doubt. Even I am not 100% certain. I'm not even 100% certain Atlantis existed. What I am certain is that humans were doing spectacular things, and a cataclysmic event happened called the Younger Dryas and reset something for somebody.
Is there a natural explanation for this formation?
Yes. So it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times. Some had originally thought that maybe it was an impact site from an asteroid, or perhaps, but there's no evidence for it. Like there's none of the nano.
The problem is there's these concentric circles.
In the next clip, we look at ancient technology that may have been used for megalithic structures like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Ben van Kerkwijk, who is an independent researcher of history and ancient civilizations, speculates the possible science and advanced technology that may have been used to produce such magnificent results.
How the fuck do you think they did this?
Look, I
take a wild.
I guess I think there's connections possibly to gravity manipulation. I think anti-gravity had to play a part in moving some of this stuff. I actually think there's some connections to some of the work that's being done with this plasmoid implosion technology. The relationship and the sacred geometry aspects of that are similar to the things that we see in some of these cultures in the past. But I'm convinced it was a form of advanced technology. Now, whether it's our form of technology, because let's face it, we can do things like that today, but it takes hydraulics and diesel powers and cranes and all that stuff. They may have had an entirely different avenue of tech.
Whether it was advanced alien technology or traditional ways of human engineering, Ben highlights the resonance of megalithic structures like the pyramids and their potential association with underground water.
You open up into the realm of resonance and acoustics and anti-gravity. I think resonance in particular might have played a strong role, because that's certainly a feature that you see in some of these older structures, whether it's an accident or not, but some of them are incredibly resonant. The Great Pyramid generates a tone just on its own that comes from the earth in there.
It generates a tone.
It does. It generates a low tone. It's basically
you
coming
can hear
from
it,
the earth.
or is it?
If you're quiet enough, you can, but it's certainly been picked up in a whole number of different experiments where they're measuring the tone it does. The whole structure does generate a low tone. It's an interesting thing. A lot of these places that typically have a connection to underground water as well. Like we know there's water beneath the Giza Plateau. Places like the Coricancha in Peru, which is also a giant megalithic building. There's an underwater river near there. We always see some form of flowing water associated with it. Whether or not that has something to do with it, I don't know. But it's just in that realm of, I think it's the answers lay in realms of science that are outside of our current understanding that we should be approaching with an open mind, because we might ultimately learn something from it.
The next segment dives into Robert Schoch's hypothesis about the erosion patterns on the Sphinx which challenge conventional timelines of ancient Egyptian history. Schoch argues that the Sphinx was exposed to heavy rainfall long before the traditionally accepted date of its construction, around 2500 BCE. This evidence points to the possibility that the Sphinx predates the dynastic Egyptians and may have been built by an earlier, advanced civilization, thriving during a wetter and savanna-like period in North Africa.
Only the head initially was above the ground surface. They carved down into the rock to free up the body. And it's that core body that showed these ancient weathering, precipitation, erosional features that are incompatible with the last 5,000 years of climatic history on the eastern edge of the Sahara. So immediately I knew there was something wrong. A lot of people get confused. They say, couldn't it be rising Nile floods? No. Geologically, that would give a very different signature on the rock. It's not floods coming up from the bottom. It's actually precipitation and rainfall runoff coming from above. Yes.
So before that, it was some sort of a rainforest.
It was very fertile savanna, lots of plants there. But before that, there had been an earlier cycle of civilization that was essentially snuffed out or brought to its knees, if you would, by the end of the last ice age.
Would you ever think that an ancient civilization could have lived on Mars? In the next clip from episode 2267, Joe Rogan talks about strange structures seen on Mars using satellite imaging.
Have you seen the recent images that they got from Mars of that big square?
Mm-hmm.
So this square, it's really crazy because it's right angle, right angle, right angle, right angle.
Yeah.
Just this alone, you're like, what the f***
Like I
is
said,
that?
if you were to tell me that was a LiDAR picture from South America, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah. It's just too convenient that it makes a square. It just seems so weird.
It is.
And then there's another image that goes along with this that's even more bizarre. It's like almost looks like a cone structure that's emanating from the surface, like surrounded by a circle.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That is weird.
Very weird. Like, what's that? I mean, it could be just a mountain, but it looks like a zit.
It does. It is.
And the fact that it's so close to that other thing, that's what's screwy.
Next, Jimmy Cossetti delves into the mystery of Gobekli Tepe's construction, which is considered the world's oldest known temple complex, predating Stonehenge by thousands of years.
Gobekli Tepe, according to ground penetrating radar, consists of approximately 200 T-shaped pillars. Only 72 of them have been unearthed. There could be hidden answers about our lost ancient past waiting to be discovered on these pillars, because all the pillars are trying to tell us some sort of story. They all have depictions, animals, all kinds of things on them.
There's the shaman with the bag.
Right. Which
is
seen,
very interesting.
Right. We've seen that from the Sumerians. We've seen it in South America.
The bag thing is very fascinating.
It is.
Those three handbags at the top were three sunrises. And if that's the case, that would almost make sense, because then like a picture of an Assyrian holding that would be like a holding of astronomical knowledge. Like this symbol could have been a symbol of knowledge of astronomy.
Right. So here's the thing. That pillar, that's just one pillar out of 200.
I know it's been theorized that it was purposely covered in dirt.
It really looks like it. If you look at pictures of the excavation, it looks like it was all piled in with stones and dirt.
Even though the massive stone pillars show different stories, and there's so much we could learn from, the majority of the site is still not fully excavated. Jimmy mentions there may be two possible reasons why all the pillars have not been excavated after all these years. He suggests that it could be due to either religious or climate change implications.
Here's the thing. When you look at the legend of Noah's Ark and the flood, if Noah's Ark existed, many believe that it was crashed onto Mount Ararat, which is also in Turkey. In the Bible, in Genesis 8:20, some of the first verses after Noah emerged from the flood is that he was said to have constructed an altar to the Lord where he sacrificed some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird. Gobekli Tepe is in Turkey, and every single one of those pillars annotates animals. And some have suggested that it could be Noah's altar. Now, that could be one reason why they wouldn't want to excavate it, is because Turkey is an Islamic country, and if there was some Christian religious belief that was corroborated, they might not want that to happen. Another possibility is that the site itself might corroborate the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. And when we're in a time frame where academics, they don't like talking about cataclysms. They want to pretend they didn't happen. They want everything to be man-made climate change.